There was once a man who cared about everything. He cared what his boss thought, what his friends said, what strangers on the internet typed. He cared about being liked, being invited, being remembered. He cared about the news, the gossip, the drama of people he would never meet. He was exhausted, anxious, and constantly performing. His mind was a crowded theater where every seat was occupied by the opinions of others. He had no room for himself. His opinions had never been his own. He had absorbed them from news anchors, social media influencers, and the loudest voice in the room. He began to ask, do I actually believe this? Or was I told to believe it? Most of his opinions dissolved under scrutiny. The unborrowed opinion is the opinion that survives the death of its source. And the man who thinks for himself discovers that most of what he thought was not thinking at all. One night, after scrolling through his phone for 3 hours, he looked at his reflection. He did not recognize the face staring back. It was a face shaped by the expectations of everyone but himself. He realized he had given so many fucks that he had none left for his own life. That night, he decided to stop. Not gradually, not politely, not with permission. He simply stopped. He turned off his phone, closed his door, and for the first time in years, he listened to silence. He had been trained to be outraged. Every day, a new scandal, a new injustice, a new reason to be angry. He realized that his outrage was not changing the world. It was only draining him. He stopped reading the news. He stopped clicking on articles designed to make him furious. He discovered that the world continued spinning without his anger. The unfelt outrage is the outrage that cannot be weaponized by those who profit from your fury. And the man who stops being outraged reclaims hours of peace every day. He had lived for the audience. Every meal was photographed, every experience was curated, every thought was shared. He realized that he was not living his life, he was performing it. He stopped posting. He stopped checking how many people had seen his updates. He began to live for himself. And he discovered that the unobserved meal tastes better. The unwitnessed sunset is more beautiful. The unshared joy is deeper. The unwitnessed life is the life that cannot be judged. And the man who stops performing discovers who he actually is when no one is watching. He spent years reading every comment, every review, every piece of feedback. He ruminated on negative words from people who did not know him, would never meet him, and would forget him in minutes. He stopped reading. He did not block criticism. He simply stopped seeking it. He learned that the only feedback that matters comes from people who have earned the right to give it. The unread criticism is the criticism that cannot wound because it is never received. And the man who does not read the comments is the man who is not ruled by strangers. He had spent years comparing himself to others, their wealth, their success, their happiness. He scrolled through the highlight reels of strangers and felt inadequate. He stopped scrolling. He deleted the apps that fed his comparison. He realized that comparison is a game you always lose because there is always someone ahead and someone behind. The unfelt comparison is the comparison that cannot steal your joy, because you have stopped looking sideways. And the man who runs his own race never finishes last in his own mind. He did not become indifferent overnight. He had to practice, daily, the art of not giving a fuck. Some days he failed. He cared again, he raged again, he performed again. But he did not give up. He continued, and each day he cared a little less about what did not matter. The unfinished indifference is the indifference that must be constantly renewed. And the man who practices not caring eventually becomes the master of his own attention. The world will try to provoke you. It will send insults, challenges, bait. He used to respond, to defend, to explain. He learned to let provocation die in silence. He discovered that most provocateurs are not looking for debate. They are looking for attention. Without attention, their words become wind. The unanswered provocation is the provocation that cannot land, because there is no one home to receive it. And the man who refuses to be provoked is the man who cannot be controlled. Years passed. The man who had once cared about everything now cared about very little. He cared about his health, his family, his work. He did not care about the opinions of strangers, the dramas of celebrities, the manufactured outrage of the news cycle. His mind, once a crowded theater, was now a quiet room. He slept better, worked better, loved better. He had not become a monster. He had become free. He learned that giving a fuck is a finite resource. Spend it only on what deserves it. He had chased approval like a drug, needing the validation of others to feel worthy. He stopped chasing. He approved of himself, not arrogantly, but simply. He realized that the people whose approval he had craved were not living his life, paying his bills, or carrying his burdens. Their approval was worthless currency. The unread approval is the approval that cannot be withheld because it was never requested. And the man who approves of himself is immune to the judgments of others. He had felt guilty for saying no, for disappointing others, for choosing himself. He realized that guilt is a weapon used by those who benefit from your compliance. He stopped feeling guilty for prioritizing his own peace. He discovered that the people who truly loved him respected his boundaries. Those who resented them had been using him. The unfelt guilt is the guilt that cannot be imposed by those who have no right to impose it. And the man who stops feeling guilty for saying no reclaims his time. He used to be kind out of obligation, out of fear of being seen as selfish. He learned to be kind only when he chose to be, and his kindness became more valuable. He stopped helping those who never helped themselves. He stopped giving to those who only took. He discovered that forced kindness is not kindness. It is servitude. The unforced kindness is the kindness that cannot be demanded. And the man who gives freely, but sparingly, is never drained by those who would consume him. The man who stopped giving a fuck did not become cold or cruel. He became selective. He learned to reserve his care for the people and things that truly mattered. He stopped being available to everyone and became present for the few. He stopped explaining himself and started living himself. He stopped performing and started being. He did not announce his transformation. He simply lived it. And when people asked how he had become so calm, so focused, so free, he smiled and said nothing. They would not understand until they stopped giving a fuck themselves. He realized that he would never be finished learning to stop giving a fuck. New triggers would appear, new demands would arise, new people would try to claim his attention. He accepted this. He did not seek a permanent state of indifference. He sought a practice of choosing what mattered. Each day he would ask, "Does this deserve my fuck?" If not, he let it pass. The unfinished freedom is the freedom that must be chosen again every morning. And the man who chooses daily is the man who never becomes a slave to habit. The fear of missing out had driven him to attend events he hated, to check his phone constantly, to stay connected to people who drained him. He realized that FOMO is not a fear of missing something valuable, it is a fear of being forgotten. He accepted that he would be forgotten by most people, and that this was fine. He stopped attending events he did not want to attend. He discovered that he missed nothing of value. The unfelt FOMO is the fear that collapses under examination, and the man who accepts his own irrelevance to the masses is the man who becomes relevant to himself. He used to fill every hour with obligations, appointments, performances. He learned to leave empty spaces. He guarded his calendar as a miser guards gold. When someone asked for his time, he did not check his schedule. He asked himself, "Do I want to do this?" If not, he said no without explanation. The unreadable calendar is the calendar that cannot be invaded. And the man who guards his time guards his life. The world will tell you that you need to care more, that indifference is cruelty, that giving a fuck is the price of being human. They are wrong. Giving a fuck is a currency, and you have been spending it on things that do not matter. You have one life, one mind, one store of attention. Spend it on what cannot be replaced. Your loved ones, your work, your peace. The rest, do not give a single fuck. The man who stopped giving a fuck did not arrive at a destination. He continues, every day, to choose what deserves his care. Some days he gives too many fucks. Other days, he gives too few. He does not judge himself for either. He simply adjusts, recalibrates, continues. The unfinished journey is the journey that never ends, and the man who knows he is always becoming never stops becoming. Subscribe to The Dark Scholar. Join the quiet rebellion of those who have learned that not giving a fuck is not apathy, it is strategy. Hit subscribe now and reclaim your attention, 1 week at a time. Take 30 seconds right now. Think of one thing that has been stealing your fucks but does not deserve them. An account you follow, an obligation you dread, a person who drains you. Unfollow, cancel, or ignore that thing today. Comment below, "I took back one fuck today." Let us build a community of people who care only about what matters. The man who had stopped giving a fuck found that his newfound peace attracted attention. People noticed he was no longer anxious, no longer available, no longer performative. They asked what had changed. He did not explain. He simply continued, and his silence was more powerful than any explanation. But a new challenge emerged. The temptation to care about whether others approved of his indifference. He had escaped the trap of caring about everything, only to find himself caring about whether he was caring correctly. He laughed at himself. The trap is infinite. Freedom is a practice, not a destination. He had stopped seeking approval for his actions, but now he caught himself seeking approval for his indifference. He wanted others to understand why he no longer attended parties, why he no longer responded to messages, why he no longer performed. He realized that this was just another form of caring. He stopped explaining his indifference. He simply lived it. The unreadable approval of indifference is the approval that cannot be granted because it is never requested. And the man who does not need others to understand his choices is the man who is truly free. He had trained himself to ignore messages, but he still felt a twinge of guilt when he saw a notification. That guilt was the last remnant of his old self. He learned to let the guilt pass without acting on it. He did not need to open the message, did not need to reply, did not need to acknowledge. The guilt faded after a few minutes, then a few seconds, then not at all. The unfelt obligation to respond is the obligation that cannot compel action because it is recognized as a ghost. And the man who watches his guilt pass without feeding it becomes immune to its pull. He had stopped reading the news, but the world kept trying to pull him back. Headlines screamed, friends discussed, algorithms pushed. He learned to treat news as noise, not because he was uninformed, but because he realized that 99% of the news had no impact on his life. He decided that if something truly mattered, he would hear about it from trusted sources without seeking it out. The unread news is the news that cannot disturb his peace, because he has unplugged from the outrage machine. And the man who does not consume manufactured urgency discovers that most urgencies are illusions. People around him still tried to pull him into their dramas. They would share gossip, complain about coworkers, rant about politics. He learned to listen without absorbing. He nodded, acknowledged, but did not engage. He did not offer opinions, did not take sides, did not add fuel. The drama died in his presence because he refused to feed it. The unspoken invitation to drama is the invitation that cannot be accepted by one who has no interest in the performance. And the man who stops participating in others' dramas finds that dramas stop seeking him. He had once envied the success of others, their promotions, their relationships, their seeming happiness. He realized that jealousy is a form of caring about what others have. He stopped comparing. He celebrated others' successes without feeling diminished. He discovered that there is no fixed amount of success in the universe. Another's gain is not his loss. The unfelt jealousy is the jealousy that cannot poison, because it is never entertained. And the man who stops envying others gains the energy that envy once consumed. He had spent years replaying old mistakes, old embarrassments, old failures. He learned to let the past be past. He did not forget his lessons, but he stopped rehearsing his shame. The memories still came, but he watched them like clouds passing across a sky. He did not grab them, did not hold them, did not let them define him. The unreadable past is the past that cannot haunt, because it is not invited to stay. And the man who stops dwelling on what he cannot change frees his mind for what he can. He had once given out of obligation, out of fear of being seen as selfish. He learned to give only when he wanted to give. He gave money to causes he believed in, time to people who mattered, attention to conversations that interested him. He stopped giving to guilt trips, to social pressure, to imaginary debts. The unforced generosity is the generosity that does not drain the giver. And the man who gives only when he chooses finds that his giving is more valued, and his reserves are never empty. He had once regretted paths not taken, choices not made, words not spoken. He realized that regret is a form of caring about what cannot be changed. He stopped regretting. He accepted that every choice had led him to this moment, and this moment was acceptable. He did not need to have made better choices. He needed to make better choices now. The unfelt regret is the regret that cannot paralyze because it is recognized as useless. And the man who stops regretting the past discovers that the present is the only place where change is possible. The man who stopped giving a fuck did not become a hermit or a misanthrope. He still loved, still worked, still engaged with the world. But he did so from a place of choice, not compulsion. He attended parties because he wanted to see the people there, not because he feared missing out. He helped friends because he valued them, not because he felt guilty. He worked hard because he loved his craft, not because he sought approval. His life was not empty. It was full of what mattered. The noise was gone. The signal remained. He had been practicing not giving a fuck for years, and he was still practicing. New situations arose that triggered old patterns. A rude comment still stung for a moment before he remembered to let it go. A disappointing outcome still bothered him before he recalibrated. He did not judge himself for these lapses. He simply noticed them, released them, and continued. The unfinished indifference is the indifference that must be practiced daily. And the man who accepts that he will never be perfect is the man who is free to keep improving. He had once worried about how he would be remembered. Would people speak well of him? Would his name live on? He realized that he would be dead, and the opinions of the dead are irrelevant. He stopped caring about his legacy. He focused on living well now, not on being remembered well later. The unreadable legacy is the legacy that cannot be controlled. And the man who stops trying to control how he will be remembered lives a life that is its own reward. He had felt the weight of social expectations, to dress a certain way, to earn a certain amount, to achieve certain milestones by certain ages. He realized that these expectations were not laws. They were suggestions from people who were not living his life. He stopped complying. He dressed as he liked, earned what he earned, lived at his own pace. Social pressure dissolved when he stopped believing in its authority. The unfelt social pressure is the pressure that cannot bend him, because he has refused to recognize the court that issues it. And the man who ignores the expectations of others is the man who defines his own success. The man in our story is not a guru or a saint. He is simply someone who decided that his fucks were too precious to waste. He still cares about some things, deeply, passionately, fiercely. But he has learned to distinguish between what deserves his care and what does not. You can learn this too. It is not easy. It is not quick. It is not a switch you flip. It is a practice, a discipline, a daily choice. But the freedom on the other side is worth every uncomfortable moment of letting go. Start today. Give one less fuck, then another, until the only fucks you give are the ones that truly matter. He looked back at the years since he had decided to stop giving a fuck. He had changed enormously, but he was still changing. He knew he would never arrive at a final state of perfect indifference. New attachments would form, new anxieties would arise, new dramas would beckon. He accepted this. The journey was not about reaching a destination. It was about continuing to walk. The unfinished journey is the journey that never ends. And the man who walks without expecting to arrive is the man who never stops moving forward. Today, identify one thing you have been caring about that does not deserve your care. A social obligation, a news story, a grudge. Let it go. Do not act on it. Do not even think about it. Comment below, I let go of one thing today. Let us build a community of people who spend their fucks wisely. The man who had stopped giving a fuck had reached a plateau. He no longer cared about the opinions of strangers, the dramas of coworkers, the manufactured urgency of the news. His days were quieter, his mind clearer, his sleep deeper. Yet he noticed a subtle new tension. He had become so skilled at not caring about others that he had begun to care too much about his own indifference. He caught himself judging how well he was not caring, comparing his detachment to an imagined ideal. He had escaped one trap, only to build another. He laughed again. The game is infinite. Freedom is not a destination. He realized that trying too hard to be indifferent was itself a form of caring. He was giving a fuck about not giving a fuck. He learned to relax into his indifference, to let it be natural rather than performed. He stopped monitoring his own detachment. He simply lived, and his indifference became effortless. The unforced indifference is the indifference that requires no maintenance. And the man who stops trying to be indifferent finally becomes indifferent. He used to feel crushed when things did not go as planned. When a project failed, when a relationship ended, when a hoped-for outcome did not materialize. He learned to separate his expectations from his peace. He still planned, still hoped, still worked, but he no longer attached his well-being to the result. When disappointment came, he acknowledged it, felt it briefly, and released it. The unfelt disappointment is the disappointment that cannot linger because it is not fed by rumination. And the man who detaches his peace from outcomes becomes unshakable. He had once believed that happiness required external validation. Success, approval, admiration. Now he understood that happiness is an inside job. He did not announce his happiness, did not post about it, did not need witnesses. He simply felt it, quietly, privately, like a warm fire in an empty room. The unreadable happiness is the happiness that cannot be stolen because it is never displayed. And the man who does not perform his joy is never disappointed by the audience's response. Law of the unspoken goodbye to the past self. He had spent years apologizing for who he used to be, the anxious people pleaser, the approval seeker, the man who gave too many fucks. He realized that his past self had done the best he could with the tools he had. He stopped apologizing. He thanked his former self for surviving long enough to evolve. The unspoken goodbye to the past self is the goodbye that is not a rejection, but an acknowledgement. And the man who makes peace with who he was is free to become who he will be. He had learned to be absent from the dramas of others, but he also learned to be fully present when he chose to be present. When he was with someone he loved, he put away his phone, silenced his mind, and gave his full attention. His presence became a gift because it was rare and complete. The unforced presence is the presence that cannot be demanded. And the man who gives his attention sparingly finds that when he gives it, it is treasured. He had once believed that he had a finite number of fucks to give, and that he needed to hoard them carefully. He realized that fucks are not a finite resource. They are a renewable one. The problem was not running out. It was spending them on the wrong things. He stopped counting his fucks and started being selective. He no longer worried about whether he was giving too few or too many. He simply asked, "Does this deserve me?" If not, he moved on. The unreadable death of fucks is the death of the belief that caring is a zero-sum game. And the man who stops measuring his fucks stops wasting them on measurement. He had carried shame for years. Shame for not being enough, for making mistakes, for being human. He realized that shame is caring about what others think of your past. He stopped feeling shame. He did not deny his mistakes. He simply stopped wearing them as a uniform. He learned that shame is a prison with no walls, and the only guard is your own attention. He stopped guarding. The unfelt shame is the shame that cannot control him, because he has revoked its authority. And the man who refuses to be ashamed of his humanity becomes fully human. He had found peace, but he knew it was not permanent. Life would bring new challenges, new pains, new reasons to care. Peace is not a fortress, it is a practice. He did not expect to remain peaceful forever. He expected to fight for his peace daily. And that was fine. The unfinished peace is the peace that must be defended every morning. And the man who knows that peace requires vigilance is never surprised when it is tested. The man who stopped giving a fuck looked back at the decade of his transformation. He had gone from a frantic, anxious performer to a calm, selective presence. But he was not finished. He knew that new attachments would form, new anxieties would arise, new dramas would beckon. He accepted this. The journey was not about reaching a destination. It was about continuing to walk. The unfinished journey is the journey that never ends. And the man who walks without expecting to arrive is the man who never stops moving forward. The man who stopped giving a fuck did not become a monster. He did not become cold or cruel. He simply became selective. He still loved, still worked, still contributed. But he did so from a place of abundance, not scarcity. He gave because he chose to, not because he was afraid not to. He attended gatherings because he wanted to see the people there, not because he feared missing out. He helped because he valued the person, not because he felt guilty. His life was not empty. It was full of what mattered. He had learned that the secret to happiness is not getting everything you want. It is wanting only what you already have. The man in our story is not a guru or a saint. He is simply someone who decided that his fucks were too precious to waste. He still cares about some things, deeply, passionately, fiercely. But he has learned to distinguish between what deserves his care and what does not. You can learn this too. It is not easy. It is not quick. It is not a switch you flip. It is a practice, a discipline, a daily choice. But the freedom on the other side is worth every uncomfortable moment of letting go. Start today. Give one less fuck, then another, until the only fucks you give are the ones that truly matter. And when you have done that, start again. Because freedom is not a destination. It is a journey that ends only when you do.
Subscribe to The Dark Scholar. This channel is your weekly practice ground for strategic indifference. Hit subscribe now and keep walking the path. Tonight, before you sleep, write down one thing that has been stealing your fucks this week, something that does not deserve them. Then cross it out, physically. Then close the book and do not reopen it. Comment below, I crossed one thing off my list today. Let us build a community of people who spend their fucks only on what matters.
The quiet room is not empty. It is full of you. Be still. Be free. Stop giving a fuck.